your body is more of a harmonious orchestra rather than having sharp instruments over here and some not shutting up over there and, all of the rest of it, instead of just having this incoherent noise through our body, we come back into harmony.
Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast, empowering you with the simple, consistent actions needed to master yourself and create a life of purpose and abundance. I'm your host, Agi Keramidas, and my mission is simple: to inspire you to take action towards a purposeful and fulfilling life. In this podcast, I invite myself inside the minds of remarkable people, and I distill their wisdom for you. So if you're ready to find practical insights that you can implement right now, make sure you follow the podcast and get the episodes as soon as they are released. This is episode 322, and I will say here as a quick reminder that for the time being, the podcast has one episode a week. It's Monday and not two. If you want to hear the details about this, then listen to episode 318. If you are feeling unfulfilled, despite ticking all the boxes of a normal life, then the following conversation with my guest Amanda Kate is for you. By the end of this podcast today, you will discover the most effective ways to achieve holistic health and wellness. You will discover how to prioritize your internal truth over external influence and how to increase your vibration to attract greater prosperity. And much more. Let's dive right in. Today I am delighted to speak with Amanda Kate. Amanda, you are a kinesiologist, a mentor, a mother, and the author of Divine Messy Human, a spiritual guide to prioritizing internal truth over external influence. You are passionate about helping people to smash through their limitations and find new levels of health, vitality, and abundance. You also work with business owners to increase their vibration and attract greater wealth and prosperity. Amanda, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to speak with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to be chatting with you.
So am I, and we have some, I believe, very intriguing topics to talk about today. Before we go on to those elements and the practical things, etc., share with us a bit about your personal journey from, as you say, from self-loathing to self-acceptance. So what were some key defining moments along that way?
Yeah, look, my life was normal until I realized it wasn't, basically. And I did all of the tick box stuff. I'm white, middle class, Church of England raised, good girl, got the good grades, did what was expected of me, went through high school, tick, university, tick, worked for my dad for a bit, tick, went traveling, tick, met the man, got married, had 2 children, international travel, all the things. And I was miserable. I just kept asking myself, are you sure this is all there is? Like, as much as it was my normal, there was also something that started going a bit deeper than that to me and started me asking questions. And that was my physical health started really declining. I had chronic fatigue. I had the start of Hashimoto's disease. I had the start of rheumatoid arthritis, which are all in that autoimmune picture. So my body was effectively attacking itself. And I started out with Western doctors who kept telling me I was the healthiest sick person they knew, which was a lovely little compliment. But I kept saying to them, there's something wrong. And they're like, well, we're doing your bloods and there's nothing here. And, nobody asked me about my relationships. Nobody asked me about my support structures. Nobody asked me about anything that really, truly mattered. And I ended up seeing a gynecologist because I was suffering for 13 days a month with my menstrual cycle. So 6 days in the middle and 7 days at the end, which is, if anyone out there is listening and going through a similar thing, that's not normal. And you may want to go and see people who can help you with that. But I went into this gynecologist and he offered me antidepressants to sort out the hormonal issues I was having. And he just said, well, it's the same way that we don't use the pill just, for contraception. We use it for all sorts of other things. And I'm going, this just doesn't feel right. I took 1 or 2 of the tablets, I threw the rest in the bin, and I went, I've got to find something else. I went to the gym with a naturopath, and so I started seeing her, and she got me off gluten, and some of the bodily picture stuff started to feel a little less draining and exhausting. I was like, okay, there's something in this. And so the first thing I did was cut out basically gluten and sugar. Now, sugar's one of those things, if anyone's ever given it up, you always go back and have a binge every now and then you go off it again. So it's always been a bit up and down for me. But that was my first foray into alternative medicine. And then I started seeing a chiropractor and I was like, oh, there's no pain in the middle of my back anymore. When I had pain in the middle of my back since I was 16 years old, I started seeing a Chinese doctor. I started seeing a whole heap of different practitioners. And I ended up going on this family holiday. There was a massive argument and I just came back an absolute empty shell of a human being. I'd had my ex-husband pace the room and scream at me for 4 hours. So I felt like a caged animal and I was terrified. I was just and of course I made it all about me because he'd always told me that he was perfect and therefore all of the problems in our relationship were me. Now, for people who understand human behavior, they will recognize that slightly narcissistic trait. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. But it led me down the road to finding a kinesiologist. And that first session just changed my life. She said, you don't realize how emotionally abused you are, do you? And I put up, there's this relationship and this one and this one. But it took me another 4 months to see that my biggest abuser was in my bed. And it took me 8 months from that very first session to actually leave. Now, people say I was brave for leaving and all the rest of it. But I didn't actually have a choice. I had to leave. If I hadn't left, I don't know what would have happened. I don't believe I would have been here right now. So that was the only choice there was. There was no other option on the table. And the reason I ended up leaving was in that week, both my psychologist and my kinesiologist, it was the first week of January in 2016. I still remember it. Both of them, within 2 or 3 days of each other, said to me, go home and Google narcissistic personality disorder because we've been dealing with you. I'd started seeing them both. They were both in the same clinic space and I'd started seeing them both in the April, May of the year before. They're both like, look, you just need to read this information. And it was like all these cogs came together. And I went, okay. And what kinesiology and all of the other things that I did started to put together for me was the fact that none of my manifested physical diseases, diseases within my body were caused by physical things. It was all emotional and psychological. And as we started to iron that out, I started finding new levels of health and vitality and wellness. And I literally went from somebody who would see their reflection in a mirror and want to smash it because I hated the sight of myself, to somebody who could look themselves in the eye in the mirror and say, truthfully, I love you. Now, that didn't happen overnight, as we know from the spiritual and personal development journey. And I still get regular kinesiology sessions. I see my mentor once a month. I also see a hypnotherapist probably once every roughly 3 months. I work with that and an acupuncturist. So I'm not just working within my own modality either. I believe that we need a multi-modality approach to be able to see all of these different things from different angles. And so I'm a huge advocate of, if you feel yourself being drawn to a modality, go try it. I can't even tell you how many different practitioners I've seen in my healing journey, and all of them have given me something. So
Yeah.
that's just a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I will start with that last thing that you said. I also had a similar experience. I have picked small things from all the encounters I've had with some. I can't say I have tried half of what you have tried as modalities, but I've picked and I have improved. And you were saying about you didn't say it in such a word, but it is like a lifelong journey that this is. I believe one never arrives somewhere. It is the ongoing process of moving on, and that's why I don't think there will be a point that you say, "Okay, this was the last healing session I have," because I don't and no more. So. Uh, what I find interesting about your story, and I was thinking about that when you were saying that, is that you started, as many people in our Western society would do, when they experience health issues, to go to their doctor, their GP, and I know it, you know it. Unfortunately, it's still not very widespread known that there are many limitations in the way that Western medicine treats our body. The focus is on disease and not on health. That's one
Yeah.
big thing. It's always how to fight a disease. Uh, I think the point I'm trying to make, and that's what I want to ask you really, is when one starts seeing the quote unquote alternative modalities, which they shouldn't be called like that because there's nothing alternative about them anyway. But for someone to understand, but one starts seeing a kinesiologist or having some Reiki or Psych K that I did or other things, inevitably there is something that starts to change in the way one thinks and perceives things, because the moment that you realize that it's not only your body, so you were saying about the emotions, the trapped emotions and all these things which your doctor will never ask you about these things. They won't even ask you about your nutrition, which is
No.
probably the other
I
thing,
know.
asking the emotions and what you put in your mouth. Anyway, I don't want to go too much into that direction of the conversation, but the question I wanted to ask about this is how, if you can give me one example of, when you started visiting those practitioners, what did it change in your mindset about the body, maybe, or health? Because I think that would be an important takeaway. I know there are many, but
Yeah.
if you can distill it
Yeah.
for me.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting. The way that I see that doctors work is it's very Newtonian. It's very, your body is a machine, and we either need to cut something out, burn it off, or poison it out. So they give you a prescription, they cut something off, or they burn it off. Okay. Poison/burn is what we call it in kinesiology circles. So we're not even looking at how the body is actually working in terms of what feeds it, uh, what allows it to be in this holistic state of health. And what the biggest thing I learned is the physical universe is 4% physical matter. So quantum physicists have proven this. So we're going from Newtonian physics into quantum physics. Quantum physicists have proven the universe is 4% physical matter. So what is the other 96%? Because of that 4%, doctors are only looking at maybe half of it, if that. But the other 96%, it's our emotional self, our psychological self, our spiritual self, our relational self, our financial self, transformational self, all these other pieces. And this in itself was mind-blowing for me because I was dipping into each of them in every healing session. So it wasn't just me looking at what my limitations in terms of health were. I wasn't just focusing on the chronic fatigue and reducing those symptoms. I was looking at what was causing those symptoms. And that's what we were dealing with. Instead of we want you to be symptom-free. I mean, I use the example of inflammation. So people take an anti-inflammatory, but why is that inflammation there? What is it trying to tell you? Why does your body feel like it needs to wrap a little bit of you in bubble wrap to protect it? Mm-hmm. That's the question, not let's get rid of the inflammation. Why do you have the inflammation in the first place? And so people were starting to ask, why do you have chronic fatigue? And the biggest thing I learned was how to human. I didn't think I knew how to human. My relationships were unhealthy. Most of them were toxic. My boundaries were non-existent. My sense of self was so distorted. I had so many belief systems weighing me down. It was like I didn't even know where to begin. And the whole way through my kinesiology journey, I did 6 years worth of study in 4 years. And every class it was like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that's what I'm getting wrong. And I would have people say to me, you know, that's not normal, don't you? And I'd say, can you say a little bit more about that? And they would have to explain to me what healthy, normal relationships look like. And I'd go, oh, okay, now I get it.
I will take a quick break for a very important message. Your ongoing support as my podcast listener means the world to me. That's why I'm extending a special invitation to 10 listeners like you to join me for a 30-minute Zoom call and discuss your podcast experience. And to express my gratitude, I will gift you a copy of my first book, which is ready but not yet published, so you will be one of the very first people to read it. Don't miss out on this opportunity to connect with me and exchange insights and read my book before it's available publicly. Click the link in the show notes to arrange our call or email me aggie@aggiekeramidas.com. Now, let's go back to the episode. I will slightly change the subject, Amanda. And, it's what in your book you emphasize the importance of prioritizing the internal truth, that's how you call it, over the external influence. And I think you started mentioning that, by listening to our body. And I want to ask you, how can an individual or how can the listener begin to shift their focus from that external influence that also, there is the element of conformity in our society. So someone shifting that in order to listen more to their internal truth. Is there any technique, any strategy you would recommend?
The very first thing I suggest people do is breathe and slow down. Mm-hmm. So you think about the amount of information that we are exposed to every second of every day. And Joe Dispenza in What the Bleep Do We Know says it's something like 40 billion bits of information per second. Of that, we can process maybe 7,000 bits of information. And there's different research out there with different numbers, but still, we're like processing the tiniest amount of information of what we're coming in. Now, how do we filter out everything that's going on versus what's coming in? We have our perceptions, our beliefs, our upbringing, our conditioning, all of these different things. And we look for what's important for us out there. Now, before I did this work, I would, I wouldn't have gone to walk on the beach every day because, it's raining today, I'll wait till tomorrow. Or I can't be bothered today, blah, blah, blah. I'd make excuses to not do the things that I know that I loved. Mm-hmm. Every single day, or at least 5 out of 7 days. Every day that I can make it, I make it. Rain, hail, shine. Literally, I've been walking at an angle down the beach because the winds have been so strong and I'm still there. And I can still see the beauty in it. Even when I'm grumbling because the sand's all soggy and I'm wet and it's miserable, I'm still there. And I can still see the amazement in it. Now, the only reason I can do that is because I'm present. We spend so much of the time in the future or in the past. The future is where we find our anxiety. The past is often where we find our depression. When we're right here in this moment, we can tap in to our truth, to what's going on, to how things feel for us. But we can only do that from a place of being in our body, being embodied. So we need to practice presence. We need to practice being in our body. And the first way to do that is to breathe consciously and deeply and to slow down. So they're the two things that I tend to say. And the intuition that we get, the signs and symbols that come through for us, the messages we get, whatever you want to call it, the vibes, the gut feeling, it's amazing what comes through to us when we do start to question what other people say to us or impose on us. When we start to slow down and feel into what feels good for us. Mm-hmm. And to start working with some practitioners and professionals who can help us move through those limitations and understand why they're there so that we can learn to love them and bring them back into the fold. And I think that's really important. And that's why I love the somatic therapies, because it's actually shifting that vibrational frequency in the body so that the memory sits easier. Your body is more of a harmonious orchestra rather than having sharp instruments over here and some not shutting up over there and, all of the rest of it. Instead of just having this incoherent noise through our body, we come back into harmony because we're able to get that vibrational frequency in a much, much better coherent state.
That's a beautiful way of putting it there. And since you started mentioning the frequency, the vibrational frequency, I wanted also to ask you, I said in the introduction that you work with business owners to help them attract greater prosperity by increasing their vibration. So can you explain how our energetic state influences our abundance and what one can do, one technique maybe that one can do to raise that frequency?
It's recognizing that absolutely everything is energy and vibration. Nikola Tesla worked in this space, and there's quotes from him out there about, everything being energy and vibration. And as soon as we recognize that, we can start to work on that vibrational frequency. Now, there's a few different aspects that obviously need to come into play. We need to look at the money stories that are going on behind the scenes, what you were raised with, the stories that were taught to you. Oh, money doesn't grow on trees. Oh, it's so hard to make ends meet. Whatever it is that your parents used to say to you, it's about also changing the frequency and changing that story, or recognizing the story is there first and then being able to consciously start to choose your own story about it. The other thing is, at what age did you become unlovable? Often we have this idea that we are unlovable, we are unworthy, we're not good enough. I usually start asking my clients, what age did their children become unlovable? And they look at me like, you are crazy. They're absolutely adorable and lovable. I'm like, so what age did you become unlovable then? And they're like, varying reactions from disbelief to shock to tears to devastation of, holy crap, I've been living with this my whole life. Our natural state is abundance because we are part of all that is. We are part of the natural world. And when we respect and love the natural world, it always provides enough for us. It's only when we try to dominate and have power over things like the natural world that resources become scarce, or when people try to control those natural resources, do things become worse. When we work in harmony with nature, with our body, with our true self, we are abundance. And money is the cousin of abundance. So if we feel into the abundance that we have, then money is more easily attracted to us because it wants to come and play. If we're hoarding it and we're, my precious about it, then it's not going to want to be there because it wants to flow. It's an energetic force. So one of the things that I do practice is every morning I go and buy a chai. So part of the reason I love my beach walk with my puppy is that it's about 7.5K. So on beautiful days, it is phenomenal. On rainy days when it's squidgy sand and you're all wet, it's less wonderful, but still amazing, still amazing. But we do that walk every day, and half before when we turn around, there's this fabulous cafe that does amazing chai. But when I hand them my money for my chai, I'm not just giving them money for chai. I am looking at that money as a contribution to every single person who gets that chai to me. All of the people who are involved in the raw ingredients, the making of the cups, the making of the coffee machine, the servicing of the coffee machine, the energy, the Melbourne water, obviously the owners of the coffee shop as well, paying the rent to the council because it's in the Surf Lifesaving Club, and like every single person. So I'm not just giving my money for a chai. I am using it to put food on maybe 2,000 people's plates. I'm giving them all a job. When I pay my electricity bill, every single person who is involved in that is I'm helping to fund. So it's this way of looking at money not as a transaction, but as an energetic force that amplifies our message in the world and allows us to take our abundance and do good with it, to share that abundance around. When I look at the herbal teas that I drink, it's every single person who was involved in all of the growing of all of those different herbs, the people who made the tea bags, the people who did the little tags, the people who shipped it, the people who stocked it at the supermarket, the people who served me at the supermarket, unless I go through the self-service till, the people who service the tills, there's all of these different people, and you can keep your brain going and going and going on who else you're helping. And it's an amazing, expansive way to think about your transacting abilities. And when we think in that expansive way, our vibration is naturally higher. And it's super fun.
It certainly is, and thank you for explaining it in such a way, because the example you gave of the transaction at that moment when you buy the chai from the cafe, and it is something that, because it happens completely internally, and for most people it happens completely unconsciously, it is a transaction, and they don't take the time to put in the appreciation or the gratitude that you are just explaining now. That event, even though it is the same event, someone handing the other person money in exchange for a product, or it could be a service, it is, and that's how I have started to understand now this question I asked you a little bit earlier about the vibration, that it is how you feel at that moment when you do the transaction. So it could be, I don't know, somehow I feel called to share an example here, that you could give someone like money, or give to a homeless person money, and still have a negative vibration within. You're doing it out of obligation, or for some other reason that has nothing to do with goodness. That action is really, in terms of the energy or the vibration of the action, there's no nothing good from that. And so, of course, that is a bit of an extreme example. I think many people in their everyday transactions, they don't think that the appreciation at that time, that I'm giving something, I'm offering something, and I'm getting something of value back. So yes, thank you for explaining that. I just reiterated in my own understanding of it. It is something that I recently started to understand more about, and find it fascinating.
Yeah. But even on the flip side, so if you see somebody who, has their holiday pictures all over Facebook or whatever it is, and you're like, damn it, I need a holiday, blah, 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 blah. And there's that negative vibe about it because you're feeling jealous, you're feeling judgmental, you're feeling whatever. If you can go, oh, that means my next holiday is coming closer because they're on theirs. So that's super exciting. Or if you see someone who steps out of a Mercedes-Benz and you go, oh, all Mercedes-Benz drivers are idiots on the road, rather than, for me, it's not a Mercedes. I want to get a truck and a camper. So, I can go and actually go off-roading in Australia and all of that. So I go, okay, I wouldn't spend it on a Mercedes, but I will spend it on, a vehicle to tow and a camper van. And I'm so excited because they've got it. So, because we get really judgy with people with money as well.
Yes, we do.
And when we can catch that judgment, because we're human beings, we are going to judge. And judgment isn't the bad thing that everybody says it is. We need judgment. Otherwise, we wouldn't know when to cross a road. Or we wouldn't know how to keep ourselves alive. We wouldn't know not to touch hot things. We need judgment. We need to be able to judge stuff for ourselves. It's when it's got that really low negative vibration. It's catching the more negative judgments and going, oh, hang on, that's a bit of conditioning in there. I remember when my girlfriend bought her house, and I was shocked because the first judgment was, my house is even closer because she got hers. This is so exciting. And I almost shocked myself with it because I'm like, ooh, there was no jealousy in that. Ooh, this is really cool. This work's working. But seeing that and feeling that as a true response in my cells and in my body was so exciting because, and I think it was only about 7 or 8 months later that my partner and I got our home. And so it was. And then I'd see people who were getting puppies all through COVID, and I really wanted a dog. And I said to my partner, if we don't get one in the next 12 months, it's not going to happen because of the age of our kids and what I want to do and all of the things. And I said, the right dog is either going to fall in our lap or we're not going to have one. My girlfriend rang me it was a Wednesday morning, and she said, are you still looking for a dog by any chance? Her dog had passed away a few weeks ago because of leukemia, and she'd put a deposit on this dog. But then the breeder that she got her original dog from rang and said, we've got your dog's cousin, and somebody's pulled out of this litter, and we're happy to bump you up because of what happened from the dog you got from us. And so she rang me and said, look, we can't get that deposit back. If you want the dog, it'll literally be with you tomorrow. So I was running around. I had about an hour's gap between clients. It was about 12:30, and I was running around madly, organizing the deposit, paying the airfare, doing all of that stuff. And we picked him up at about 4:30, 5 o'clock the next day. But there was that moment of when everybody else is getting their dogs going, oh, I may never actually have one. That's really sad. But then I was going, no, if you get the right dog, it's just going to fall in your lap. That's exactly what happened. And so there's a different vibrational frequency, and that's what you want to be tapping into as much as possible. Now, you do need to do some base work to be able to get to that level, because some of the stuff that's sitting in you is in your subconscious, and you're not going to be able to see it. You're not going to know that it's there because it's like the air you breathe or the water you're swimming in. You don't know you're wet. And so that's a really important part as well.
I liked very much that example with the social media that you and the judgment, and it is a matter of noticing our reaction, how we feel at that moment, and that's because we are on that's what we are creating at that time, when we either feel happy for them or we feel jealous about them, and they are very different. Amanda, based on all this conversation we had today so far, if you were to give to the listener one actionable item, something that she can implement tomorrow morning or tonight, what would you say?
I think it goes back to breathe and slow down. Where are you right now? I used to use the question, so with my chronic fatigue, my stress responses that I hadn't finished would come out in my body in really strange ways. So if I was on the rower at the gym, I could end up having adrenal shakes for anything up to 30 minutes from a couple of minutes on the rower. It was pretty scary. I almost looked like I was having a fit. And the first time it happened, I was terrified, but so was my personal trainer. It was a bit scary. But what I did in those moments was I'd just go, okay, where are my feet? Where are my feet? Where are my feet? And then once I could actually feel my feet again, I'd start to go, okay, can I feel my toes touching? Can I feel where my socks are touching my feet? Can I feel where there's air? Like I'd start going down even further. And that really helped me get into my body. And then once I was present in my body, then I could regulate my breath because I was actually in my body again. But for me, I couldn't catch my breath until I was back energetically in my body. So asking where your feet is a really great way to almost come down because they're attached to the earth. So you're grounding in that moment. Where are my feet? Oh, boom. And I can feel it now if I'm out of my body and I go, oh, hang on a minute. I almost feel like this clunk as I fall back in. And it happens like that now because I've practiced it so much. But when you can feel into, okay, where are my feet? What's my breath doing? Before you try and breathe, okay, what's my breath doing? How does it feel? It's a bit choppy. I'm, panting. I'm breathing a bit fast. Okay. Can I slow that down a little bit? Now, can I slow it down a little bit more? Now, can I maybe do the box breathing or whatever other types of breathing you do? Mine often was count 8 in, and then I could only hold for 2 sometimes because the holding of the breath made me feel more panicky. So I couldn't do the box breathing. So I did, okay, let me breathe in and out. And I would try and equalize the in-breath and the out-breath, and then I would try and lengthen them. So it was, but I had to be in my body first. So for me, it's about breathing, it's about becoming present, and it's about slowing down.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Amanda, where will you direct the listener who has enjoyed listening to you and wants to find out more about you and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. If they just go to my website, which is amandakate.com.au. So remember the .au for Australia. And all of my links are there. So they'll be able to find all of my socials. And I've also, as I was saying to you just before I started, recently started my own podcast, which is called Divine Messy Human, which is the same title as my book. And the book can be found on all places, but Amazon and Kindle are probably the easiest for people to find.
That's great. Thank you. And I have a couple of last quick-fire questions to finish up the conversation today, Amanda. And my first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
To me, it is balancing the mind, the emotions, the body, and the spirit. I don't think we can just do the body or the mind or the emotions. We need to have a mix.
Yeah, that's exactly what holistic means, the word holistic, the Greek word, yes.
Yeah.
And a hypothetical one, if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give her?
Am I allowed to say a bit of a naughty word? Don't date assholes. And listen to your intuition. Do you know? No. Not listen to my intuition, act on your intuition. Because I always heard my intuition. I always saw the red flags, but I didn't trust myself enough to act on it, to take action. And if we don't take action on our intuition, we're missing the magic. And so I would tell her intuition is pretty damn spot on. Listen to it and act on it and trust it. Yeah.
I love this. Amanda, I want to thank you very much for our conversation today. I enjoyed it. I believe the message was very clear that came out and very important, and there was lots of value there. So thank you very much. I want to wish you all the best with your journey and with your mission, empowering others and living the world a little bit better than how you found it, as you say. So any last parting words from you?
Oh, just to say thank you for sharing your light with the world as well, because we need more of us out there spreading it. So I really appreciate you and thank you.
Thank you for listening. Your support as my podcast listener means a lot to me, and I value your input in shaping the show's future. And that's why I am inviting 10 listeners like you to join me for a free 30-minute Zoom call and discuss your podcast experience. Your insights will play a key role in making the show even more tailored to your needs. And to express my gratitude, I will gift you a copy of my first book, which is ready but not yet published. That means you will be one of the very first people to read it. Don't miss out on this opportunity to connect with me, exchange insights, and read my book before it's available publicly. Click the link in the show notes to arrange our call or email me agi@agikeramidas.com. I'm looking forward to speaking with you. Until then, stand out, don't fit in,